Do good, Maverick. Go here. Welcome to podcast episode number 176. I'm recording this in my car, so I'm sorry about the bad lighting and all the background noise. This car is like a 20-year-old car, so in other words, it's all too new, full of computer crap. Just all of these computer-like rattling noises in the background. It annoys the heck out of me. So I'm sorry I'm not able to get my car to shut up. So I'm sorry about that. Another thing, these Volkswagen cars, full of computer crap, but they're not even able to have a proper lighting. Well, that's the way it is. And starting this on this tech rant, this catastrophically horrible Zoom video tool, it's just crazy. I'm not even able to record the video horizontally on my smartphone with Zoom. I didn't find any settings for how to get my video to be horizontal instead of vertical. That's how crappy Zoom really is. It's kind of mind-boggling to think about. How can a video tool, which is so horrible as Zoom is, how can it become like one of the world's most popular video conferencing tools or video call tools? I just find it mind-boggling. Anyway, enough of this tech problem rant. On to today's episode. Resist the slave mind. Resist the slave mind. In order to try to explain what I mean by resisting the slave mind, I asked AI to help me make some notes and explain it in a pretty logical or rational way. So here's some of the things that it came up with, or helped me came up with. The slave mind is a conditioned mindset that blindly obeys, conforms, and settles, trading freedom for comfort, truth for approval, and purpose for survival. That's one example. Another one. The slave mind is mental autopilot, programmed to obey, consume, and comply without question. That was a punchier one. A more philosophical one. The slave mind is the invisible prison that convinces you to live someone else's life and call it success. Direct and bold, another version. The slave mind, it's the mindset that fears freedom, craves validation, and obeys without thinking. No, I'm not saying all of these are completely accurate, but I find a lot of them pretty thought-provoking. The slave mind is the invisible system that keeps you obedient, silent, and small, without chains, without whips, without walls. It's the spiritual and psychological matrix designed to strip you of your God-given authority, keeping you distracted, addicted, broke, weak, and compliant. You think you're free, but you're trapped, mentally, morally, financially, serving masters you've never met, chasing pleasures that never satisfy, living a script you didn't write. The slave mind doesn't question, it obeys, yields to comfort, it bows to fear, and worst of all, it believes the cage is home. A Bible verse, Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed the renewing of your mind. The world wants your mind conformed, passive, soft, tame, you know. Romans 13:1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. You know, that's a Bible verse that a lot of people use to defend the concept that you should obey to the authorities, to the government. And in many cases, we should. But the thing is, when the government wants you to do immoral things, ungodly things, you know, things that are against what the Bible tells us to do, then we need to obey God more than men, you know. Acts, another Bible verse. Sorry about that. Another Bible verse, Acts 5:29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. Ephesians 6:12, and this is the translation from the Geneva Bible. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the worldly governors, the princes of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness, which are in high places. Did you notice? It said, and against the worldly governors. That's a fascinating thing about the translation in the Geneva Bible. It mentions, and against the worldly governors. You know, Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the worldly governors, the princes of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness, which are in the high places. When people mention this Bible verse, they usually mention it explaining that as Christians, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against demonic stuff as well, you know. But the way this verse explains it, it mentions several things, and one of them seems to be, like it says, and against worldly governors. So, as Christians, it seems that one of the things we wrestle with will sometimes be the worldly governors. Maybe that means the government as well in some cases. The thing is, sometimes governments might do crazy things. History proves that one, you know. Here's some other notes about resisting the slave mind that AI helped me come up with. To resist the slave mind means to reject mental programming that encourages blind obedience, passive acceptance, or conformity to systems that limits personal freedom, critical thinking, and self-determination. It's about thinking for yourself rather than blindly accepting what you're told by media, education, or authority. Questioning systems designed to keep people in debt, dependent, or distracted. Choosing your path instead of just following the default script, school, job, retire, taking responsibility for your choices and freedom rather than blaming others or circumstances, valuing truth over comfort, even when it's unpopular or difficult. In essence, it's the mindset of the free man or woman, not in chains, not in debt to society's expectations, but fully awake, intentional, and powerful. So yeah, resisting the slave mind. What is the opposite of a slave mind? A free mind? Something like that. Here's a quote from the movie The Matrix. You have to understand most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Morpheus, The Matrix. Here's kind of some bullet points. Break free from default programming. Most people follow a life script they didn't write. Like go to school, get a job, buy things you can't afford, retire with bad finances or in a bad financial situation. Resisting the slave mind means becoming aware of that script and rejecting it when it doesn't serve your deeper purpose. That was one bullet point, or bullet point one, I mean. Bullet point two, challenge authority and so-called common sense. Don't take things at face value just because they're said by so-called experts or repeated often. Be willing to ask hard questions. Who benefits from this belief? Who profits from my obedience? Things like that. Bullet point, value freedom over comfort. The slave mind craves safety, security, and routine. Even if it means living small, the free mind values risk, growth, and truth, even if it means discomfort. I'm not really sure about that one. The free mind values risk. I would rather say the free mind is willing to take calculated risks. But yeah. Bullet point number 4. Create instead of consume. The slave mind consumes endlessly. Scrolling, scrolling, social media, surfing the internet, binge watching TV series, shopping. The maverick mind, or the free person, the not slave-minded person, I guess we can say, creates businesses, solutions, freedom. No, in many ways, I think one of the main things for people that wants freedom is actually to abandon consumerism and embrace producerism, produce things. Of course, when it comes to money and income, but also these days when we are kind of living in a so-called attention economy, even things like content, producing content instead of consuming content, things like that, It's about a value creation paradigm instead of a value extraction paradigm. Bullet point 5, own your time and energy. Who controls your calendar? Your boss? Society's expectations? Or you? Resisting the slave mind means reclaiming ownership of your time and using it to build what matters to you. Or to, I would say, to also do meaningful things that is of value for eternity. Bullet point 6, reject victim mentality. The slave mind says, I can't because of my past, / my government, / the system. But instead, maybe we should say, the system is rigged, so I'll build my own, or to find ways to make things work, That doesn't mean you have to break any rules or laws. That's not what I'm talking about, but yeah, finding solutions instead of focusing on problems and not labeling yourself as a victim. Even if you are a victim of horrible things, I don't think focusing on that too much is a helpful thing, Bullet point 7, stay conscious of manipulation. This one is a big one. Stay conscious of manipulation. Algorithms, like when you search on things on Google or on the search platforms or the search motors and AI tools, things like that. Oftentimes algorithms, and especially on social media, they will kind of choose a lot of what comes up and what you will see. Algorithms, media, and advertising prey on unconscious minds. You don't have to be unconscious to fall victim to manipulation. Mass media, it's a big one. If you paid any attention to what happened during the year 2020 to 2024, if you didn't, it's about time to wake up now, because what just happened was one of the biggest propaganda and brainwashing operations in human history. I don't have. I'm struggling to find the appropriate words to explain how bad it actually was. What was going on from the year 2020 to 2024. Resisting means staying conscious of what you consume, how you think, and what narratives you accept. Narratives. That line I was kind of weird. What narratives you accept. You don't have to necessarily accept a narrative. A narrative, like some people have observed things and made a narrative that they're presenting to you. Instead, you should seek the facts, seek the truth, Bullet point 8, here AI listed, financial independence equals mental independence. No, it doesn't, but it is a fascinating point. The one who signs your paycheck. That's people that are signing your paycheck, or people that, if you're working as an employee, you are in many cases more vulnerable to many types, manipulation, and yeah, some kind of, how should I explain it? Groupthink stuff, you know? Entrepreneurship is one of the strongest forms of resistance. I'm not sure about that one, but it's a lot harder to control people that are not dependent on the paycheck. Just look at all the people that did absolutely crazy things during 2020 to 2024 for one main reason. They were afraid of losing their jobs and their income. Really crazy. And if you read the book Ordinary Men, who was the author now again? Let me find it, because that one is a massive one. The book, Jordan Peterson have talked a bunch about it. Ordinary Men, Reserve Police Battalion 101, and the Final Solution in Poland. By Christopher R. Browning. A staggering. What's up with these online bookstores? They can't even show a picture properly. Here's the quote: a staggering and important book. Chicago Tribune. That's an understatement. My point is, in that book, Ordinary Men, they talk about a bunch of police officers, World War II, that were asked to do some truly evil stuff. And the thing a lot of people think is that, yeah, the people doing evil stuff during World War II, they were like indoctrinated and brainwashed and stuff like that. No, 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 no. Not all ordinary men. Those police officers in Reserve Police Battalion 101, they were not indoctrinated by the Nazis. That's the fascinating thing. They were not. But some kind of dynamics made them do crazy things, made them go along with it. And the thing is, the point I'm getting at is that one of the things that seemed to be a big factor in the lives of the police officers that had the guts to say, no, I'm not going along with this. They were kind of, the thing is, the police officers that were asked to join the Reserve Police Battalion 101 and do those evil things, they were basically kind of lined up and given the choice. That's the thing. They were given the choice. Now you can either go along with this that they're asking you to do, or you can be a kind of coward and just go home and not go along with this. That was kind of the choice they were given. And it seemed to be a factor in the lives of several of the police officers that said no. Like, no, I'm not going along with this. Bye bye. So several of them had an income stream outside of their job as a police officer. One guy, I think he had some kind of bookstore, and or was it a shoe store? And I think one guy was very close to retirement. There are different things, but it was basically in the lives of several of them, they were not really that afraid if they said no to the job. Then after war, if they lost their job as a police officer, they wouldn't really consider it as a big catastrophe. They would just like, yeah, I'll be good. I'm not going along with this. I'll be good. I'll find a way to make my income in another way than as an employed police officer. So if this means that I'm losing my entire career and my entire income as a police officer, that's okay. That was a big factor. And it is kind of fascinating that so few people talks about that. I'm not saying that people that don't have an extra income outside of their job, that they will not have the guts and the courage to say no to evil things. That's not what I'm saying. But it looks like it makes it a lot easier to do so. Because the thing is, sometimes people are kind of gradually pressured into doing things. It's like you give them an inch, and before you know it, it has turned into a mile, and before you know it, things have escalated into just crazy, super bad things before you know it. So yeah, not being dependent on that job, on the income from that job, it definitely makes it a lot harder to control you for other people. It makes it harder for people to treat you like a slave if you have the guts to leave. Also, it also reminds me of the BATNA. What is that negotiating book that talks about it? How to negotiate anything. BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement. What book is it? Let me try to find the title. Google sucks. You know, that's one of the things with, I'm trying to Google it. That's one of the things with Google. People say like, Google it. Yeah, Google, it's amazing for some things, but it also sucks for a lot of things. That's one of the reasons that I'm building my own online education and community platform where I interview 30 success stories or 30 experts on each and turning it into a course and oftentimes also a book. People's one of the objections to people, if you're making some kind of online course, something like that, I can just Google it. It just, it's like they get rattled up and angry about it. Google it. I had a conversation with one guy. He had seen this YouTube video about how online courses were a scam. And he told me, like, hey, you could just Google it. Okay, here's a challenge for you. I said something like this: go to Google and find me 10 real life success stories of people that went from zero to over $10,000 in profit per month with email marketing. And I think I said in less than 90 days or something like that. Because email marketing is one of the oldest, most time-tested, proven, predictable, and profitable ways to make money online. It's one of the very few things that have consistently been working pretty much since the origin of the internet all the way up until today. My point is, there is a lot of those stories out there. So finding 10 of them shouldn't really be that difficult. I told him, like, yeah, please try just Googling it and find 10 of those and get back to me. And he was like, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Like, he was going to do it. And then he gave me some kind of picture of a book. A book about email marketing. Man, I asked you to find 10 articles or 10 success stories about this, and you were giving me a book. You're proving my point. I'm not sure if he got the point at all, but that's the thing about Google. It is both amazing and horrible at the same time. And it's very much controlled by algorithms. And the thing is, Google, some people seem to think of Google like some kind of super lexicon that if it exists on the internet and you search for it on Google, you will find it. That's completely wrong because it's a search engine. And what pops up on search engines? Search engine optimized content, SEO, you know, ads and search engine optimized things. And also you have factors like algorithms and censoring and like that as well. But yeah, I'm getting on another rant here. Batna. Oh, this technocracy is getting out of hand. I was clicking on an Amazon link, and it looked like I need to have some kind of password in order to access the page. Wild. Anyway, Google sucks. I don't find what book, and my memory is too bad. I can't remember what book it was from. Basically, the point was that when it comes to negotiations, having a great BATNA, that's an acronym, BATNA, BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement, that if you are not able to get a deal, you have another alternative ready. If you don't have that alternative ready, you will be in a super weak position to negotiate anything. If you're going to buy a car, oh, I need a car, I need to get to work, and that's my dream car, and I have the money, and if I don't get that car, I will be like a nerve wreck for 4 weeks. If that's the kind of mindset you go into when you're going to buy that car, you're in a very bad bargaining position, a very bad negotiation position, a bad position to negotiate. I mean, that's a bad example. For example, if you have a job and the boss is threatening you, take this experimental injection, shoot it up into your veins, and just hope for the best, even how dangerous you think it is. Take this injection now, or you will lose your job and you will lose your income. And if you don't have any alternative lined up, then you are in a very weak position to stand your ground compared to if you had a good alternative or dependent on how good your alternative was. Of course, there is an alternative even if you don't have another income. Maybe your alternative is to lose your job and your income and take the consequences. But if you have a good best alternative, maybe you have a side hustle generating a good income and investments and 5 job offers, and then the boss comes and says to you, take this injection or you'll lose your job, you'll be in a much stronger position than if you didn't have those things. So yeah. Bullet point 9. See through the illusion of normal. See through the illusion of normal. What's normal today? Debt, burnout, distraction, mediocrity. Question what's normal and dare to build what's right and dare to do what's right. The illusion of normal. You know, that's kind of in some circles saying that you want to see through the illusion of normal might get you labeled like a mentally ill person. That's one of the diagnostical points in psychology, if people are deviating from the normal, I forgot how it was exactly phrased, but if people are deviating too much from what is considered to be normal, it's one of the things they can use to diagnose someone as being mentally ill. And in some cases, they can also, what's it called in English? They can basically take people by force and yeah, forcefully put them in a mental hospital for treatment or observation. So seeing through the illusion of normal, yeah, that's a controversial thing these days, especially dependent on where you are. And the thing is, doing things that are not normal, it is something we should really think hard and carefully through before we jump onto things that are really not normal, because sometimes it is crazy. So it's definitely something to be careful about, like Jordan Peterson explains as well. But the thing is, sometimes what's considered normal is not really good. Sometimes the majority is wrong, or sometimes it might not even be me. It might not even be the majority. Sometimes you have a called the silent majority, where most people are actually agreeing with you on the unnormal view, but they are silent. And you have a bunch of crazy people or very enthusiastic people on the other side that are promoting something that is not normal, or that is crazy, bad, woke, whatever. But those few are so loud about it that it seems like the majority have the same view. But in many cases, it is the silent majority. A bunch of people agreeing, but no one really has the courage or the skills or the interest to speak out about it. And it looks like most people are going along with what's considered normal, but it might not be that way. My point is, what is seen as normal can in some cases also be difficult, you know. Zooming out, that's one thing. If something is seen as normal today, and you might be considered like a crazy person if you say something against it, just pause and think through, like, hmm, if I say I don't want my young children to go to kindergarten, and people are getting a temper tantrum, calling you crazy, and saying that you're abusing your kids if they don't get to go to kindergarten, you can just pause for a few seconds and think, hey, I want the best for my kids. But isn't this thing, if I just zoom out and look at the last 4,000 years of documented history, what has been normal? Well, for young kids to be raised at home with their mom and dad and family and other siblings, that has actually been the normal thing for several thousand years. The last 4,000 years of documented human history, that has been the normal. But now, just the last 3 to 4 decades, there's a new thing called kindergarten, where now that's the normal. So maybe on this thing, my view on not wanting to put my young children in kindergarten, maybe it's not crazy after all. maybe it's actually the healthiest and best way to do it, to have them be with their mom and family and friends at home instead of in a kindergarten. So yeah, that's also the thing. A lot of things, if you just zoom out and look at the history, that can be a quick way to at least identify things that are seen as normal these days that didn't used to be so. And if that's the case, then maybe the majority is wrong, you know? Are the majority wrong now? Or was all the people during the last 4,000 years of documented history, were all of those people wrong? You know, sometimes during history, people were wrong, but really that they were wrong in 4,000 years during all of that time. Oh, that's I think rather there is some kind of agenda going on about maybe feminism, a bunch of things is promoting a society where children have to go to kindergarten. Anyway, see through the illusion of normal or challenge what's seen as normal. That's the thing. A lot of people are so afraid of doing something that is not normal. It's like if you're not normal, then you are unnormal. No, you're not just unnormal. You're crazy and you're mentally ill. And no, that doesn't have to be the case at all. Let's take that up. The definition of normal. Have you ever defined normal? A lot of people spend their entire lives striving to be normal and seen as normal. It's like one of their biggest fears in life is being labeled as an unnormal person. But does it really have to be bad? The definition of normal. Normal, adjective, conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. Technical, normal, of a line, ray, or other linear feature intersecting a given line or surface at right angles. Normal to it. Yeah, noun, the usual, typical, or expected state or condition. But yeah, the first the first one, conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. The Merriam-Webster version, synonyms. No, that's. But yeah, normal. If that's the definition of normal, it doesn't mean that being unnormal is automatically crazy or unhealthy or unintelligent or wrong. Sometimes not being normal is the right thing to do. Like, if you talk about not being normal, most people will kind of get a gut reaction. Oh, that's bad. But if you talk about being extraordinary, oh, wow, that's so cool. What? Extraordinary, extraordinary. In other words, not or, you know, sometimes in order to get other results outside of the ordinary, then maybe you also have to do things outside of the ordinary. Doesn't mean you have to do crazy things, but yeah. The thing is, if you only think normally, act normally, do normal things in a normal way at a normal scale, then you shouldn't be expecting to get better than normal results. You know? So not being afraid of not being seen as normal. That's a big one. You were born an original, so why should you die a copy? Bullet point 10, embrace discipline as a path to freedom. The slave mind sees discipline as restriction. But you can also see discipline as a path to mastery, freedom, and purpose, and progress, you know. Bullet point 11, refuse to sell your soul for likes or status or money, I would add. Clout chasing is just a modern form of slavery to public opinion. Maybe. True freedom is doing what's right even when no one's watching or applauding. I think there's more to true freedom than that, but that's a good one. God is always watching, so we should always do the right thing. True freedom. Who the sun sets free is free indeed. If you want true freedom, you need Jesus Christ. That's the thing. You know, the Bible talks a lot about freedom and the way to really get freedom. Freedom from sin, sickness, disease, and death. That's through repenting of your sins and putting your trust and your belief in Jesus Christ. For who the Son sets free is free indeed. Bullet point 12, connect with other free thinkers as a way to resist the slave mind. I think that's a good one. Surround yourself with those who've also broken the chains. You'll need each other on the journey. That's a big one. You know, that's the thing about courage. It is kind of, what's the English word that I'm looking for? It's kind of let me see. That's the thing about courage. It's contagious. In many ways, it's kind of contagious. If one man has the guts and the courage to stand his ground on something, and it's like punching his fist in the air, not budging an inch, it kind of straightens the spines of the other men around him. But the thing is, it can also be that's a positive thing if you are the one to stand out. It definitely can have that effect. But sometimes maybe you are the one that also need help with things to be strengthened by others. And if you're trying to resist the slave mind, and if a lot of other people are not agreeing with you, then they'd be slowing you down in many ways, you know. I'm not saying you should seek out echo chambers to the point where you're not really thinking clearly. or logically, intelligently, wisely. But connecting with other free thinkers, other people that have already resisted the slave mind, it's a big one. Like the Bible says, as irons sharpens irons, so a friend is. My Bible is in Norwegian, so I keep forgetting how it is in English. This verse, Proverbs 27:17. As irons sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. That's a big one. Bullet point 13. Use technology, don't be used by it. The slave mind is addicted to dopamine loops. If you have resisted the slave mind, you should use, or if you're resisting the slave mind, you should use tech as a tool, not as a master. That's some bullet points that the AI helped me come up with when it comes to resisting the slave mind. I hope this didn't become too much theory. The slave mind. When people hear the word slave, there's a lot of horrible associations that comes to mind. I'm not a slave. It's like they get angry about it. Doesn't mean you have to be a slave if you have a slave mind, but maybe you have maybe you have a mindset that makes it easier for people to make you a slave, or to, in many ways, act as a slave. You know, when you talk about slavery, and some people might talk about things like the slavery of the 9 to 5. Oh, does it mean that everyone that has a 9 to 5 job is a slave? No, it doesn't have to mean it that way. So it's a term that is kind of loosely thrown around these days, you know, when it comes to slavery. But the thing is, if we look at history, what was a slave? Was it really just a bunch of people in coal mines that were driven around, abused, and hit with a whip for 15 hours a day until they worked until they couldn't even work for a second more? And for 15 hours every single day, they were controlled by whips and violence like animals. Was that really how it was with everyone that was a slave? No, it wasn't. There was a lot of different ways slavery existed in history. And you also have slaves, and you also had servants. And if we include both of those, slaves and servants, then there's a lot of different ways during history that it has existed. So in some cases, there has probably existed slaves or servants at different points in history where those slaves or those servants actually had more freedom than a lot of people these days that are trapped inside the matrix of the 9 to 5 rat race, you know. There's different ways to look at it. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Yeah, resist the slave mind. When it comes to escaping the 9 to 5 rat race, I'm not an expert in the process of doing it myself. So at the time of this recording, I've not even achieved it myself. So I'm not pretending to be some kind of expert here. But the thing is, You know, I'm in the process of building my own online education and community platform that I call Terrific 30. And it's basically one of my main concepts is that I interview 30 real life success stories or 30 experts, and I turn those 30 interviews into a course and oftentimes also a book and a community. And a lot of them will be around the topic of entrepreneurship, making money online, freedom, things like that. And one of the ones that I focused on a bunch lately is community cash cows. You can find it on communitycashcows.com, where I've interviewed. I'm going to interview at least 30 of them. At the time of this recording, I've interviewed about 12 of them. Owners of paid communities that are making at least $10,000 in profit per month. So that's one way that you can escape the 9 to 5 rat race, you know. So if you're looking for a side hustle that can become a significant income while you also hopefully will be able to have a lot of free time, then maybe building your own community cash cow, your own online community, maybe it could be a solution for you. The exciting thing is that these days it is still kind of new. Online communities, they have existed for years, but the concept is also kind of new because there's literally thousands of industries and niches out there where an online paid community doesn't even exist. Whereas if it did exist, it could be tremendously valuable. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of so-called blue oceans out there when it comes to building paid communities. That might be something you want to check out. So maybe you should head over to communitycashcows.com and check it out. Anyway, take care and God bless.